Okay, I think we're about ready to start. Well, hello everybody and welcome again to our local chapter meeting, virtual meeting. I think this is our fourth one this year and it's been about 61 days since our March 24th meeting. So can we get the next slide, Colleen? So special thanks to Margaret Batchelor from Penn State University. She'll be our sponsor spotlight for this meeting, and she's done this before and she's done a wonderful job, so I'm looking forward to this. Special thanks to everybody who's taking time out of their busy schedule for joining our meeting. I know how busy everybody is. We were just talking about that before the call started. A lot of you are really pegged right now. And again, I appreciate you investing yourselves, and thank you again to all your leadership, your managers and supervising directors for allowing me to join this meeting as well. For investing yourself, because a lot of material you get here is great because you take it right back to the office. So going to our schedule, for the first part of our schedule, we have Mike Stanziola will be giving us some HDI chapter updates and HDI national updates. We're not having an icebreaker, we're going to have one, but we had such a great meeting with Nick Diamaco at our March 24th meeting regarding the best practices assessment. So we had John Fagiano and I can't pronounce his name right, Todd.
Picciuello, that's fine.
Todd Picciuello will be joining us to talk a little bit about how we do these assessments. And then we have Ken Weston. Your ticketing data is full of insights. Identify how can you use this to drive improvements and drive strategic conversations. I'm really looking forward to this, to hearing Ken. Then we have Margaret of Penn State giving our sponsor spotlight. And we have our strategic forecasting and planning with Eric Whetstone from WFM, and I'm really interested in seeing this as well. It's a lot of good information. And again, we have a raffle coming up at the very end, and you must be electronically present to win. So this is for practitioners only. We have our next slide. So special thanks and special shout out to all of our everybody involved in HDI. This is all volunteer event, and we have our day jobs, and we still put a lot of time into this. We got Tracy Brandenburg, VP of Partnerships, John Kitchen, VP of Events, Colleen Rush, VP of Special Events. We have Dave Sharp, VP of Finance, Mike Stanziola, VP of Memberships. We have Randy Stark, VP of Communications, and we have the one and only Jason Turner, VP of Programs. Can I get the next slide? And on our Leadership Council, we have Ariel Dimabalawan, we have Kara Cron, we have Darren Moses, Ross Rosner, Alexis Townsend, who will be doing our raffle today, and Jason Trez. Let's see our next slide. And our remaining schedule, unfortunately, we had to cancel our summer social this year due to COVID. We can't really do that. We have a July chapter meeting. We had TBD, but it's probably not going to be in person. It's definitely going to be virtual. So that TBD I should have taken off. Our baseball game, unfortunately, in August was canceled. We have a virtual meeting in September. I'll leave that as TBD because a lot can happen between now and then. I'm starting to see signs in different stores I'm going into letting me in without a mask, and I feel kind of weird not wearing a mask, believe it or not. I'm like, where's my mask? Our golf outing, we're hoping we can still have that. And we will be having our annual leadership conference on the first Friday, December 3rd. And that will, if we are in person, we will also do that virtual as well. So, and we're going to be talking, maybe squeezing in another meeting between October and December as well. So if we have the next slide, I think Mike's up. And we have the one and only Mike Stanziola from First Pro. He will be giving us our corporate updates. Here you go, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm going to fly through this really quickly. I've just had a lot of questions come up over the last month since our last virtual chapter meeting on our membership. I want to remind you all that going to thinkhdi.com and joining the HDI community is free. It's free to be a member. In fact, you have to be a member in order to join at the local chapter level. This slide is just a really quick slide of how it works. You can click on this YouTube, write that down, jot that down. But really what I wanted you to understand is how the HDI community works. On that next slide that we just saw, you'll have access to the HDI Connect, the practice service and salary reports and the trend reports and the toolkits. The things you became familiar with your HDI membership are all at no cost right now. So, but what I really wanted to stress, people are like, hey, Mike, I want to be a member at the local chapter. So the local chapter membership is $149. We lowered that by $100. You have to be an HDI community member, and then you will have to sign up for an individual membership. And people are like, can you invoice me? I can't. So you have to, on the next slide, you'll see our benefits and what we offer as being a local chapter member. Your HDI community comes with the HDI Connect, the research, the resources, and some discounts. But really, your discounts and your benefits really come at the local chapter membership, the free job boards, the $150 off the HDI annual conference, the service management world, the 5% off the training. So, and then the discounting at the events and social events that John just showed you that we normally do. We're hoping in October we're able to do our golf outing again. We're going to see. I do know that HDI will not be doing any in-person events until Q4 at the earliest. All right. Thank you to HDI affiliate. In the chat, you'll see the link to join that. On the next slide, though, what I do want to show you are the upcoming events that we'll have that if you are an HDI local chapter member, you will get $150 off this service management world. Well, actually, I'm sorry, that's the Support World Live that's coming up. Right now, you can join the Service Management World digital experience, which is virtual this year in July 21st. I wanted to make sure everybody saw, though, that it's free to sign up right now. And after June 11th, they'll be charging $99. They trimmed it down to 2 days this year, but take note, sign up now, it's only $99. On the Support Management, Support World Live, it will be in Orlando this year. It starts actually on Saturday. The first 3 days are your training classes. If you show up on site, that's where your local chapter membership will really get you a discount. This event is $1,999 just for the conference and event. The conference itself starts, you'll see that Tuesday through Thursday programming, wraps up Thursday at lunch. But I'm really excited to get back to seeing everybody and getting back in person. Again, we're looking at November 6th through 11th this year in Orlando. So you can register now and sign up for that. But so for those of you who've been reaching out regarding your membership and asking if you're a member, the first question I got to ask, are you an HDI community member, which is free? And then are you a member at the local chapter? Hit me up, ask me if you're wondering if you have that membership fee. But note that's $149 per person. And we really want to see everyone sign up. At some point, we've been talking about at some point, these events will be will be free to our local chapter members, but there will be a small fee charge to join the local chapter programming. So those were the key updates that I had, John. I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the HDI events, that we weren't going back to any in-person events to at least Q4. And the other big thing I want to make you sure, when you sign up for these conferences, would you do me a favor? Use the LCM VCH code. That assigns you to the Philadelphia chapter. I want to make sure Philly's represented well at these conferences. And take a look. If you're a member of the local chapter, you will get $150 off the HDI conferences, and you get 5% off the HDI training. Remember, though, use that code, and you have to be a local chapter member. Okay, that's all I had. Over to you, John.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. I don't want to put any pressure on Todd and John, but we have Nick Diamaco who went through the HDI best practice assessment. And so no pressure at all, but thanks so much for joining, Nick. Great presentation at the last meeting. So Colleen, it's all yours.
Okay, so this is the time when we would normally have an icebreaker, but in lieu of that today, based on the feedback we heard and the presentation we had from Nick last meeting, we thought it would be helpful to share some additional information regarding the HDI audit. So we have John and Todd here to speak with us today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. And I think I may have a little bit misunderstood. So the presentation is somewhat geared towards the certification part of what we do, but I think the processes are close enough that Todd can kind of present to that. But I'll go ahead and share the deck we created.
Yep. And while John's pulling the slides up, just to follow up on what Mark said in terms of the conferences and the relationship between Support World Live and Service Management World. So as he noted, historically we would have 2 live events, and Support World Live would be in the spring, obviously, and then Service Management World in the fall. Because of COVID and because of the condensed schedule this year, we decided to run 1 live event, which will be Support World Live in Orlando in November. which will have some of the service management world content as well. So there will be a kind of an expanded service management track as part of Support World Live, so that people who want to come and we're planning on attending Service Management World Conference in the fall, you'll get the best of both worlds. You'll get a lot of Service Management World content with the Support World Live conference as well. And then we made the Service Management World virtual event free as long as you sign up in time. So hopefully that provides some clarity on why it was condensed to 2 days and why it was free.
It says I don't have the ability to share. I don't know if whomever the host is might be able to. There we go.
Great, thanks, John. So yeah, just as John noted, and Nick, hello if you're on, Nick from Thomas Jefferson. So the engagement that we did with Nick at Thomas Jefferson was a best practice assessment, which follows essentially the exact same steps that we're going to talk through here regarding the Support Center certification. Both are based on the HDI Support Center standard. The certification program, which I'm going to provide some details on here, goes through the exact same assessment, but you get at the end, instead of kind of like an operational improvement roadmap, you also get rated against the standard for the purposes of recognition and certification. But the steps that you take to go through either a best practice assessment or the Support Center certification are the same. So HDI Support Center certification is an organizational level audit, really a continuous improvement program, a certification program that's designed to drive continuous improvement and then recognize support centers that are operating at a world-class level. As I noted, it's based on the HDI standard, which is an aggregate of best practices found in various global frameworks, standards, and methodologies, however, representing the unique perspective of the support center. I put John and I's contact information at the end of the slide deck, but if anybody would like to see the HDI Support Center standard and haven't, I know many of you have been members for a long time and maybe you've pulled it down from the website in the past. It is now just available by request. So if anybody wants to have the standard to take a look at, just send John and I a note. And finally, the Support Center certification is analogous to ISO 9000, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, in that it requires quality processes and procedures that are documented, followed, and produce expected results. And I'll get into a little bit more about how that works right now. So essentially, the HDI standard and Support Center certification framework is organized into 8 categories called either enablers or results. And so what we do through this process is we assess a number of different elements. You'll see all the detail in the HDI standard if you ask for it, about all the different elements that are listed underneath these categories. But I believe there are something like 87 different specific elements that we review for process maturity and rate on a 1 to 4 basis, from a process maturity being just started to fully mature. And that goes the same, that's the same for the categories that are enabled, that are called results. So we really look at how your support center is operating, the level of process maturity that exists across all the critical elements, and then the results that it is producing, both actually from a people satisfaction perspective, your own people, customer satisfaction perspective, and then of course performance results. Your primary KPIs, how are you setting them? Are you meeting them? Do you have a continuous improvement methodology in place to drive improved performance? And so we go through a process. I think, John, if you want to click to the next slide, talk about the benefits. Okay, you know what? Go further one. I just want to, while I'm on it, the process. I'll go back to the benefits. So much like the engagement that we ran with Nick at Thomas Jefferson, there are kind of some fundamental steps. We start with project kickoff and planning, which is a stakeholder meeting, both with HDI and the client. All of this is done virtually now, by the way, where we talk about timelines, goals and objectives, any key considerations for the project so that everybody's on the same page. The HDI auditor is obviously involved in that meeting as well. We go through a pretty extensive data collection exercise where we send through a checklist of documentation and reporting and things of that nature that we need to review in advance of actually conducting the assessment. Once that data is in and reviewed, we actually then start with the assessment activities. Now, historically, prior to COVID, this was all done on site. We've modified our process so that this can be done remotely. However, now that things are improving, we are sending consultants back to the client sites if the clients want. If their business environment is allowing it, we're accommodating them. And those activities generally encompass things like, interviews with leadership, interviews with key stakeholders in the support center, IT, HR, training, trying to observe the workflows, doing focus groups with the analysts and the supervisors. Again, reviewing all kinds of quality documentation, really anything that you can imagine that would allow us to get a really deep understanding of how your business is operating and at what level of maturity. After the assessment activities are done, that auditor kind of steps away and does the analysis and conducts the rating and the scoring against the HDI Support Center standard. Once that scoring is done, they generate a really comprehensive report back to the client that shows where they stand across all 80 plus elements, again, from a 1 to 4 process maturity level rating, and a readout, which essentially determines at that point, have you met the threshold? Are your processes mature enough to actually achieve HDI Support Center certification, or are there some gaps that still need to be addressed? And so that final deliverable is the scoring report and then, a related gap analysis. That whole process generally takes about 12 to 14 weeks from start to finish, although that is not 12 to 14 weeks of continual effort on the client's behalf. And the certification, if it's achieved, has to be renewed every 2 years to maintain the status. John, you want to back up one to the benefits? There we go. So, why companies pursue HDI Support Center certification? I think that, depending upon the industry, that has a lot to do with it. We work with many managed service providers, BPOs, contracted desks that use it for, sales and marketing reasons. But some of the common outcomes generally include things like increased service consistency, customer and staff satisfaction, productivity and efficiency gains, obviously cost savings that are aligned with the efficiency, increased ability to satisfy compliance requirements because it really forces you to have all your ducks in a row, improved profitability for the center and ROI, and ultimately it really helps position the support center as a valued partner both within the IT organization and the broader organization as well. So really designed to elevate the strategic value of the support center. Right. So the standard investment for the initial support center certification is $45,000, and the renewal, which takes place every 2 years, is $30,000. Now this can vary a little bit based on the size of an organization. If you're standalone and you're on the smaller end of support centers, we can be a little bit flexible on that pricing. And at the same time, we've also been approached by several, large multinational global enterprise service desk organizations that want a, enterprise level certification. Pricing is obviously going to be different for something like that, and it's based on, the complexity of the organization, the number of locations, the different countries, et cetera. But we are certainly in a position to, and willing to be as flexible as we can on how you go about achieving certification, and so that it's achieved in a way that supports your organizational goals and objectives. And then, so we wanted to keep it high level because I know there's a lot on the program. John's email address and phone number are on here. If anybody would like, again, to get a copy of the standard, just to take a look and see what's involved. And really, it's a good exercise, too, to look at and do some sort of kind of mental self-assessment of how you think your support center stacks up against the standard, and if pursuing the certification is something that you'd be interested in moving forward with, by all means, we are absolutely here to help. Does anybody have any questions before we give back our time? All right, excellent.
That's great, Todd. I really appreciate you your flexibility and
Of course.
giving this info.
Yeah.
When Nick spoke at our last chapter meeting, we all could kind of see like how transformational it was for the Jefferson support team.
Yep.
But of course Nick didn't go into the details of like how to make it happen.
Sure.
And so I appreciate you coming in and spending a couple minutes with us to kind of walk us through it. Your contact information, we'll make sure that everybody has it.
Yep.
And if there's any interest now or in the future, I know that they'll reach out.
Yeah, and even if any, and this goes for all levels of the kind of certificate of the assessments that we conduct. If anybody just has any general questions, right, about what the reports look like, or what kind of efforts involved on the customer side, there's a lot of information that we didn't have the time to go through today. But if anybody just has any general questions, feel free, no obligation to reach out.
Very good. That's awesome.
All right.
Okay, can we go back to our slides? There we go. So we've got two featured speakers today. I'll be introducing the first one, which is Ken Weston. Ken's a senior research analyst at the Infotech Research Group. I met Ken at Service Management World last year. I attended one of his sessions, and he certainly made a strong impression on me as a knowledgeable thought leader in the discipline of IT service management. As a senior research analyst with Infotech out of Ontario, Canada, Ken routinely meets with many organizations to understand their issues and challenges in the fields of end user services, IT service management, as well as IT governance. I saw Ken give this presentation on service desk ticket analysis earlier this year, and I knew it would be a great session to share with the Philly HDI members. So with that, please welcome Ken to our May chapter meeting. And John, if you would make Ken a presenter or a host.
Did it work?
Here we go. Can you share your screen now?
Let's see if I can share. Okay.
There we
Can
go.
everyone see my screen okay?
Got it.
Very good. So thank you for the very kind words, Jason. Today's topic, your ticketing data is full of insights. Identify how you can use this data to drive improvement and drive some strategic conversations. As a person who talks to service desks routinely, this is an item that's near and dear to my heart, and it's an area that comes up all the time. Even if you don't have the greatest quality data, there's something there, and there's value there that we can share and that we can report on with to other organizations within our companies to show the value of the service desk or to help make the business case. Some tools I'm familiar with are ServiceNow, Cherwell, Avanti, Zendesk, and Team Dynamics. I also cover Citrix, VMware, and Microsoft. And one of the major topics near and dear to my heart is also enterprise service management on top of just normal IT service desks. I'm an analyst with Infotech Research Group. So we produce research that's unbiased towards any one vendor, and this is to help leaders make strategic, timely, and well-informed decisions. Our research goes deeper than our competitors. We focus very much on providing advice on how to do things, not just what are those good things that you should be doing. We have over 30,000 members who help us build our research, and we've got research on many different topic areas, including strategy, financial management, service planning and architecture, PMOs, and app dev. I want to identify 3 major objectives today. So the first one, let's identify some prerequisites to data analysis. What do we need to do in order to analyze our data? The next item is I want us to look at what information it is that we're looking for in our ticket data. What information are we going into and diving into our tickets to find out? And I also want to have us being able to learn from each other in this session. I have the luxury of being a researcher, so I'm always learning from every conversation I have with practitioners, and everyone has their own way every service desk has their own way of analyzing ticket data. So I'm a big fan of us meeting together and trying to identify what exactly it is, what best practices we are doing that we can learn from each other. On the topic of learning from each other, I have set up a poll or a quick survey that I'm going to throw into the meeting chat. You're more than welcome to fill it out if you would like to, but I'm just very curious to hear how you're analyzing your ticket data, what tools you're using for analyzing your ticket data, as well as what are the top things that you're looking for when you do your own analysis. I'm just going to put that into the chat and feel free to complete that if you would like. Okay, so back on with the show. Service desk pain points. I like to start off with why is it that we need to improve? And where are we feeling some pain points today? The first pain point that I most often see is businesses are asking more and more of our service desks. Our service desk at Infotech Research Group, not only are they handling tier 1 requests and incidents, but they're also acting a bit as the facilities management for the group. Why not just get someone in the service desk to go change that light bulb over there? When we're looking at increasing numbers of SaaS tools, when we're looking at the increasing complexity of the environment with everyone working from home, it makes it a lot more difficult to, the business is starting to ask us to do a lot more things that we're not used to doing and that we haven't architected our environment to do. Another major item is low self-service adoption. If we can get everyone to just use the self-service portal, then we don't need to manually go through each and every email that comes into the system, reach out to the end user 3 more times, and try to get them to try to get a sense of what it is that they're asking for. If I have to see one more email that says, help me, I'm going to cry. And then lack of integrated knowledge management tools. When we don't have these knowledge management tools integrated with our tickets, it takes a lot more clicks for us to put the information into the tickets, for us to leverage ticket templates, and for our service desk technicians to get the information that they need in order to do their jobs. So what does all of this have to do with ticket data? Well, if we can use our ticket data to track how business demand changes throughout the year or throughout different cycles, that can help us to be a bit more proactive. That can help us to identify what training we're going to need, if we're going to need to hire some additional personnel, or if we're going to need to bring on some additional co-op students, maybe a month earlier. Low self-service adoption. Until we've got actual ticket data that says, this is how many tickets are coming in through self-serve versus how many tickets are coming in through walk-up or email, then it's just anecdotal. And then the lack of integrated knowledge tools, this is always going to be a pain point if we can't integrate those knowledge management tools into our ticketing system. And the more that we can show, the more that we can look at what are those incidents that are occurring, what are those incidents that are occurring, what are those service requests that are being requested, the more that we can get a better sense of what sort of knowledge-based articles we're going to need. And if we can do some sort of cross-reporting, then that's going to make our lives a little bit easier. Okay. The service desk I always like to come back to this slide here. So we've asked over 18,500 people across 75 organizations, how happy are you with IT? How happy are you with service desk effectiveness and service desk timeliness? And we find that when people are happy with the service desk, was in particular with service desk effectiveness, they're almost 50% more likely to, they rate all other IT services 50% higher if they're satisfied with service desk effectiveness. If they're satisfied with service desk timeliness, an end user rates all other IT services 37% higher. The service desk is the face of IT. And if we can use our ticket data, then we can improve our service offering to the organization, and we can improve overall satisfaction with IT beyond just satisfaction with the service desk. Why improve at all? Well, we're wasting a lot of manual work on tasks that could easily be automated and tickets that could easily be prevented. We need to find out, though, what are those tasks that can be automated? What are those tickets that could be prevented? Tier 2 and Tier 3, those expensive support staff, they lose time and they lose resources working on service desk tickets when we're overly escalating. And if we don't track, is this a ticket that could have been solved at Tier 1? If we don't ask that information, we don't track that information, and we don't look through our tickets to see what information is being escalated, then we're going to continue losing project time and losing our experts' time because they have to focus on our service desk tickets. They can't focus on value add activities that we're paying them to do. And lastly, employees want a modern, streamlined self-service experience. While we did identify earlier that 50% of service desks report challenges getting people to use self-service portals, when we take a look at consumer research, end users are already using self-service tools in their consumer lives. When they're at home trying to rebook that plane ticket, or they're trying to work with their telecom service provider to upgrade their phone, it's all self-service and it's for the most part online. Let's bring in that consumer experience into the service desk, and let's start by looking at what are those requests that are most common, and let's focus on those items. I like to also start off with this recovery paradox. Think of your favorite fast food restaurant. If you go to McDonald's or you go to Starbucks, up here in Canada, it's Tim Hortons, and they mess up your coffee, they mess up your bagel, you go up to them and you say, "You messed up my bagel, I am angry." They will fix it for you. And they will add in something nice as well. Maybe they'll give you a free Timbit or a free donut if you've been waiting a long time, or they'll give you a refund on it. At that service failure point, your satisfaction with them goes way down. You're very disgruntled. My chicken nuggets are cold. I'm unhappy. But the second that they go to you, they ask you for help, and you fix it for them when you recover that service, you end up being happier with them than you would have been if you hadn't had a problem in the first place. The same is definitely true for service desks. The same is definitely true for IT. If you're able to recover your services, if you're able to successfully recover from that incident, then you're going to have a happier end user, you're going to have a happier business unit. And if you can highlight those successes, look through your tickets and highlight those successes, then that's going to help you to communicate what the value is to the organization, and it's going to help you to increase your satisfaction from the business unit. Okay. So I want to hear a little bit about what you're doing today. Feel free to put a message into the chat just to say, what are you doing today for analyzing your own tickets? I've heard from speaking to my members quite a few different approaches that are taken. A very common approach is to take a look at your ticket data and take a look at, I see that Timmy's is really coming. to Philadelphia area. That's exciting. But when I'm looking at what sort of things organizations are doing with ticket data today, a very common item is just looking at tension metrics. I want to be able to report ticket volume. I want to be able to report first contact resolution. I want to be able to show mean time to resolve. And I'm analyzing those tickets. I'm analyzing all of our tickets in that way and just presenting that to stakeholders. It's very common for your self-service, for your IT service management tools to have that built-in item, to have that built-in. I see customer satisfaction is a big one. Team leads, queue managers, definitely looking at aging tickets, especially items that are breaching service level agreements with the organization. Those are very common. When we take a look at if you're of a certain maturity and you've got a configuration management database, I hear a lot of organizations with an effective configuration management database. All three of them are able to cross-reference their incidents to the different configuration items that are impacted, and they're able to do some problem management that way. Definitely looking at aging tickets, trends by application, trends by service. A major item, again, is asset management. If I'm able to look at, I've got these laptops, they're 5 years old, but I always get a bunch of incidents after that 4.5 year, then maybe we need to shrink that refresh cycle to give a better experience to the entire organization. Another, and the last item that I want to bring up here, we can use ticket data to justify hiring an additional resource or changing our service level agreements with the organization. When we take a look at our ticket volume and our FTE, we're able to say, hey, this is, in order for us to operate at this level for an extended period of time, we're going to need 9 FTE. We only have 5 FTE. That's a gap of 4. So either we need to hire additional personnel or the data shows that we're going to need to change our service level agreements. All wonderful things that organizations are doing. Let's talk about prepping our data. We want to avoid garbage in, garbage out. The first item is making sure we're distinguishing between different types of tickets. A major item as well, so it's fairly common to have incidents and requests and problems and changes. A major item that I see a lot of service desks struggling with are those requests that are actually projects. We need to get those projects out of our queue. We need to get those projects out of our ticketing system because that's going to help us to better analyze the requests that we're supporting. Change tickets are very important to capture, not just so that way we're differentiating a change from a request, so we're not mucking up our service request ticketing reports, but also so that way we can better identify and look at trends between changes in service desk incidents. If we always see that whenever we make a change to one of our databases, we always get an influx of incidents right after that, then that's a good reason for us to review our change management and change control practices, maybe add a little bit more review, maybe bring something that was originally a standard pre-approved change back into a normal change, and then problems. So the root cause of a number of incidents, this is important for us to be able to call out because we don't want to have incidents open for forever that's just destroying our mean time to resolve. You also can't analyze ticket data that doesn't exist. I was sitting on the ServiceNow analyst report, analyst session on Monday, and ServiceNow brought up that they're helping their customers by benchmarking their data, your own data, against all other ServiceNow customers. And that is a fantastic thing to do, but it requires you to have data to benchmark. Before you can start analyzing your ticket data, you want to make sure that you've got ticket categories and that you're categorizing those tickets. Do we have them categorized by asset, by service? Some organizations do one or the other, some do both. Do we have resolution codes? Do we have fulfillment codes, closure codes? we can't analyze, if we want to analyze password resets, then we need to make sure that we make it as easy as possible for us to analyze those password resets. The working time spent on a ticket. Service desk tools will allow you to use timers. The timer will pause on a ticket when you change the status to waiting on end user or waiting on vendor, waiting for equipment. It's important for us to use those timers so that way we know how much time our technicians are actually spent working on tickets. Ticket priority is a major item. I was working with a service desk from a small tech startup working out of Jira Service Management, and they were using ticket priority, but they weren't using impact or urgency. Well, that's great. That's great for them because you're able to analyze tickets coming in by priority. But if you want to be able to look at tickets that have a high impact in particular, then you're going to need to have that information in your data. Ticket channel. How did this ticket come in? Tickets break down by walk-up service, by instant messaging. Was it a ticket that came in through the self-service portal? When we're getting to 5 and 6, these items are a bit more uncommon. The configuration items. Are you associating incidents, events, and requests to configuration items? That's going to be very helpful for us to be able to go through and say how many tickets have incidents have we recorded against the service, and then shift left indicators. This may require some customization in your tool, but looking at, are we tracking tickets that could have been solved by self-service, through automation, or at a lower tier than actually resolved it? Once we have that data, we need to make sure it's correct. And the best way of doing this is to make good data a habit. Let's have our queue managers regularly review our tickets. Let's have peers peer review tickets on the service desk. And the intention here isn't to point out someone who's doing a bad job and say, Jason, you're doing a bad job. The purpose here is to make sure that everyone's doing the work the same way. We're going to get those squirrely tickets that come in, and we want to make sure that we're following our expectations the same way and that we're responding to tickets the same way. So good items here: set expectations with agents, both on the service desk and throughout the rest of the organization. Review ticket quality weekly with individuals. You may also combine this with call quality review, reviewing the calls that someone's made. Reviewing the completeness of escalated tickets. Sure, service desk leaders have a certain domain of focus, but we also need to make sure that those escalated tickets that we keep sending up to infrastructure and they keep complaining that could have been resolved at tier 1, well, we want to still make sure you're doing a good job of filling out your ticket, so that way we've got the information we need to be able to do that. And this might seem a bit silly to say, but it's important that we communicate strengths and weaknesses both to the individual and with the wider organization. There's a good chance that if Ken over there always forgets to fill out the resolution code or gets the resolution codes mixed up, it's pretty likely that someone else in the organization's in the same boat. We also want to be able to communicate who's good at doing that. Good quality tickets and filling out those tickets, so that way we can try to replicate those strengths over throughout multiple people. And then cleaning up your data quarterly. Bad data will slip through your weekly assessments. If this is what your ticket data looks like, then when we add fancy ticket reporting, start to do analytics on it, maybe even add a chatbot or artificial intelligence to it, it's just going to look like this. And that's not a good thing. So I'm interested here in how do you keep your data clean? Oftentimes, what I have heard from clients is that they, like a major item, is that they keep they've got a huge backlog of tickets that are 6 weeks, maybe 6 months, sometimes even 6 years, depending on how long you've been with your ticketing tool for. Going through and closing legacy tickets, old tickets is a common item. A major common item pain point that I hear with tickets is incidents that are really service requests and service requests that are really incidents. Making sure that we're moving those over as appropriate. Having some sort of call quality review checklist. Thank you, Jason. That helps to make sure that we're reviewing the tickets in a consistent way. And if we've got checklists in Excel or some way of capturing that digitally, then when we bring up to stakeholders, hey, we really need 3 additional personnel on the service desk. If they come back to you and say, no, you've got bad ticket data, if you can show them those call quality reviews, you can say, well, you know what? It's really only incorrect once every 500 tickets. And so that's not that big of a deal. It's ticket, the data is accurate. And that's a common complaint that I hear. So what are we looking for? Well, we want to look for things from 4 different perspectives. We want to look at information about end users. We want to look at information from the business unit and executive perspective. We want to look at information that's going to be helpful for service desk technicians and information that's going to be helpful to IT engineers and to technical specialists. From the end user's experience, if we can analyze what that user experience is, that's going to help us to have a better sense of what that experience looks like and where there's problems with that experience. From our perspective, we're defining that user experience from the user being able to do my job. I can do my job. That's something that I need to be able to say as an end user. I can do my job. Looking at mean time to resolve, mean time to fulfill, number of tickets per employee, satisfaction with apps and devices. We also want users to be confident in IT, and this can come from metrics such as number of security incidents. It can come from number of high impact, high urgency, SEV1 incidents, project success rate, training utilization, recurring issues that are coming up, and the number of times we've actioned transactional feedback. Users also want to easily get support for their tools. So we can look at here, analyzing self-service tools and tickets associated with that. We can look at catalog and KB knowledge base articles are understandable. Just if we can look at the average star rating and also correlate that with the number of incident tickets associated with that knowledge base article. Users also want to have options for submitting tickets, and that goes back to our distribution of tickets by different intake channels. And lastly, I'm aware of things that are relevant to me. We want to make sure that users are getting targeted communications. We're not over blasting them with emails from the service desk. The number of people I talk to who say, oh yeah, all service desk emails go to my junk mail. We want to avoid that as much as possible. So we can also look at ticket, how we're communicating and view rates on those items, especially when we're communicating system outages. I had previously mentioned analyzing tickets by intake channel. We want to identify if we need to rebalance here. So I'm very interested in ticket volume by channel. If we're getting 90% of our tickets coming in through email and we're always escalating certain tickets to a certain group, maybe half of the tickets always get escalated to another group. When it comes in through email, we have to manually do that. We can show end users, hey, if you use this form, then we can decrease the time for you to get help on that by 15 or by 50%. It'll now go right into that developer's inbox or that developer queue inbox, and it still gets tracked in our IT service management tool. Mean time to resolve or fulfill by ticket channel, both time spent waiting on the user as well as time not spent waiting on the user. If we can look at mean time spent working on the ticket by ticket channel versus mean time total for that ticket. That's going to help to make the business case and justification to the end user. Hey, if you submit something to the self-service portal, we can action your work and complete your work in half the time, as well as processing time by channel. If your CIO or business is pushing back against using a self-service portal, and you can show that, hey, for these 50% of tickets over here, we have to spend 5 minutes figuring out what queue to escalate these to, and we don't provide any value to it, then that helps to, again, make the justification within IT that we can use some sort of other portal, or can make the justification that we need to create some more self-service functionality. After we've thought about it from the end user's perspective, it's very important that we think about it from the executive's perspective. Classic tension metrics here: time to resolve, end user satisfaction, resources, what's the cost per ticket or what's the volume of ticket, as well as what's our first contact resolution rate looking like. The issue with first contact resolution rate is that it's such a great measure, but there's as many ways to calculate first contact resolution. There's more ways of calculating first contact resolution than there are service desks in the metropolitan Philadelphia area. So we want to make sure that we've got a metric, a way of calculating it, and that we're calculating it consistently. It could be that we're looking solely at tickets that are resolved at the first tier without being escalated. We could be looking at tickets that get resolved without changing status to paused or waiting on user. We just want to make sure that we're calculating it consistently and that the business understands how it is that we're calculating it. It's also important when we're benchmarking our own stats, our own first contact resolution rate to other organizations, that we keep in mind there's so many different ways of calculating this number, so it's okay that our number doesn't exactly line up with what that benchmark is. Improving IT infrastructure and operations. Great, we can provide a ton of value by analyzing our tickets. We can provide a ton of value to other IT organizations. Let's look at the relationship between changes and incidents. Are there changes with a certain type, or we're changing a certain type of configuration item and it always causes an issue? Are there changes happening outside of our maintenance window that are causing incidents? Is there some sort of day where we always have incidents occurring after that change window? Let's look through our tickets for that information. Ticket volume by configuration item. If we don't have a configuration management database set up and we're not associating incidents with CIs, we can still associate our incidents with types of assets through our categorization scheme. That information right there, looking both at incidents as well as service requests, volume by type of asset or by configuration item, that's going to help us know when we need to refresh equipment. It's going to be a huge input into our problem management practices. It's going to be a very big input into our service portfolio management, looking at, you know what, we get statistically more incidents working with this brand of router, so let's move over to a different model, for instance. Trends and when incidents are occurring. So if we always get incidents with laptops, always get incidents with laptops at 9 a.m. in the morning, what's causing that? If we don't analyze our ticket data, then we don't get that cue to ask that and to start looking for that information. If we always have, I was on site for a consulting engagement with the service desk and of a financial institution, and 3 days out of the 10-day engagement, users couldn't log in at 9 a.m. And after some root cause analysis, they found out that it was because that the backup of the database was taking so long that it was causing Active Directory to not be able to access the database running from the same service. And they realized that, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to fix it and to stop this very painful incident from reoccurring. Commonly occurring events, if we see network issues, or we see firewall issues, or we see servers commonly restarting, looking at our incident tickets and providing that information to infrastructure and operations is going to help them to be more effective. And lastly, commonly escalated tickets. Are there tickets that we can start handling at tier 1? If we're always escalating tickets, or we're escalating 90% of tickets relating to password resets, then that's going to make everyone very grumpy. So let's look at opportunities to take on more of that at the tier 1 level, if not through automation and self-service. It's important that we think of infrastructure and operations as a partner for us, or as a customer for the service desk. ITIL 4 is very big on co-creating value with our customers. Well, infrastructure, they're a customer to us. AppDev, they're a customer to us as well, because we're providing them reports. So let's talk to them and find out what sorts of information is going to be most helpful to them. What information can we start tracking that's going to be helpful for that and help create value with them? Okay, next slide. We want to make sure that we're proving the value of improvements and projects. Let's look at trends and data over time, and not just mean time to resolve. Let's make sure we're still looking at the impact of projects and improvements on tension metrics. The item here that we need to keep in mind is that whenever we're changing processes, whenever we're establishing processes, mean time to resolve might increase here as people start to adjust to the new ways of working. Another major item is that self-service functionality might actually increase mean time to resolve, might actually decrease first contact resolution. If people can solve their own problem, can solve their own easy incidents, their easy service requests through your self-service portal, then tier 1 and IT is just left with the harder, more challenging, or more technically fun items. And that's going to increase mean time to resolve over the long term even. It's important that we're tracking customer satisfaction and tickets being resolved at each tier, in addition to mean time to resolve and first contact rate here. From a service desk perspective, we want to make sure that we're analyzing our tickets for shift left opportunities. So shift left, it's a common idea within the IT service management industry. If you've been to one of the HDI conferences, this item might have come up. Should have come up. It's also common in ITIL. So we're trying to shift the burden of tickets from expensive resources at tier 2, tier 3, and the vendor, trying to shift that left to the end user, to automation, and to tier 1 as much as possible, because that's going to decrease the cost per ticket. That's going to make it faster to resolve tickets, and hopefully it's going to result in higher end user satisfaction. So when we're looking at our ticket data, we want to look at what tickets commonly get escalated up, what tickets are being performed en masse by the service desk. Are there service desk tickets that can be self-served? Are there let's analyze to see how many password reset tickets we're getting. And if it's taking up 90% of our tier 1's time, then that's a huge opportunity for us to automate that item and make it through some sort of self-service capability. And we can analyze these metrics over time as we do that. Also, if there are tickets that keep getting escalated up to a certain vendor, then that's going to be very helpful for us to know maybe we're not going to work with that vendor as much anymore. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to capture that information that is in the vendor's head, so that way we can at least get tier 3 doing that and knowing that. And when we're analyzing our tickets, just to look at where is their low satisfaction, where is their high time to resolve, always looking at it from a perspective of, is this something that we can automate? And when we're trying to prioritize what our efforts are, let's prioritize let's prioritize improvements and projects based off of ticket volume, how far up it's getting escalated, and what the impact looks like on end user satisfaction. I've been talking to more clients recently about staffing, determining to see if they're staffed to meet the demand of their end users. We want to look at what's your ticket volume over time to see what are those trends in tickets coming in over the year, over a quarter, over a month. If we always see tickets ramping up for some reason the month before the end of the quarter, then maybe there's an opportunity there for us to build out some additional reports or self-service capabilities for finance. Maybe we need to train finance and train sales on certain items to help them work through it more effectively. Tickets by hour, when are we busiest throughout the day? 9 a.m. right after vacation tends to be a big item as people forget their passwords or get locked out of their accounts. Passwords reset over the holiday season. So let's make sure we've got enough staff there. Another major item is that if we're seeing with people working from home, they're working at all hours of the day now. Work-life balance has gone out the window. Do we need to have technicians working late at night? Is there a need there? Do we have a significant number of tickets being created at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night? Do we have a significant number of tickets looking at day of the week? Do we have a certain large amount of tickets coming in on the weekend? This is a big item for large organizations. Many organizations don't, many small and medium-sized organizations don't have the ticket volume to justify having around-the-clock service. But if you do have high enough volume on the weekends, that could justify building out more self-service functionality. An important item for us to keep in mind when we're looking at volume and comparing that to staffing levels, we need to calculate our actual capacity. So that's hours in a day minus shrinkage. Shrinkage is a very big concept in the call center space. What I mean by shrinkage, that's any time that you're not able to take a call as tier 1. So that could be because it's my lunch break. That could be because I'm in training. That could be because I'm assisting on another project. We want to make sure as we're calculating and as we're reporting against actual agent utilization and agent capacity, as we're calculating that agent utilization, we want to keep in mind that shrinkage number. And then lastly, looking at service desk technicians. What information is going to be helpful for them to manage their day-to-day? What information is going to help them to be more effective? If we can identify the number of tickets being closed per tier, then that's going to make sure and prove to tier 2 that we at the service desk are solving enough tickets. Or it can also show that, hey, you know what? After recently, we've had a large number of tickets that had to be escalated up to tier 2. Maybe we need to look at rebalancing or investing some additional time. Throughput by staff member is an interesting item. We want to make sure that everyone is doing their fair share of work at the service desk. But at the same time, we also want to identify that certain members of the service desk aren't taking on all of the easy service desk tickets. This is where the ticket quality assessment is going to be very helpful here. We want to make sure that there's a good balance of service desk tickets, and that if tier 1 or if our swarm is truly full of generalists, that people are getting experience in closing tickets of all different types. Top ticket issues. If we see that a quick increase in the number of email filtering tickets that come in, or we see a big increase in the number of password reset tickets that come in, then maybe there's an incident either with our exchange service, with Okta with Active Directory, or maybe it's just after vacation and everyone's forgotten their password. Number of tickets by category, again, looking at to see if there's a client services issue or if there's a massive spike in facilities tickets, massive spike in security tickets. That's going to help the service desk identify if there's an issue, a problem with one of those spaces, or if there is a high severity incident that's occurring. Average close times by ticket priority. This is a great item to make sure that we're matching our service level objectives within IT, maybe our operating level agreements with different parts of the organization and our service level agreements, and making sure that tickets being closed by the ticket close time makes sense. So if tickets keep getting escalated up to tier 3 and they can resolve the ticket in less than 15 minutes, that's a great item for us to know about, so that way we can move that to work being done by tier 2. And if tier 1 is always spending more than a week on 10% of tickets, then those tickets might need to get escalated sooner, so that way the end user can get their item resolved or they can get their ticket fulfilled sooner. Updating our service portfolio. We want to analyze our tickets to make data-driven decisions around the standard offerings we provide. If we're no longer seeing service requests for Blackberries, then maybe we no longer want to offer Blackberries as a standard item to the organization. Or if we keep seeing people request Surface laptops and we keep making exceptions to let users have those Surface laptops, then maybe that is an item that we want to make standard. Maybe we want to make it so that way anyone in the organization can order a Mac, because we've got 20 Macs already being supported by IT. So do we need to turn something into a standard offering? Is something no longer being used? Does something no longer meet users' needs? Do we keep getting incidents or service requests associated with those Blackberries because they haven't been patched in a while? Then that's an item for us. That could be a trigger for us to make that item no longer standard. Does this not self-service portal? Does this website or our CRM that only runs in Internet Explorer 6, do we keep getting incidents about the virtualization tool for Internet Explorer 6? If that's a yes, then that's a good item for us, a good trigger for us to start updating that and migrating to something that's going to use a more stable virtualization tool. And do we at the service desk have the capacity to take on additional types of tickets? Enterprise service management is a wonderful thing, especially from a customer perspective. I just go to one space and I can get help with onboarding. I can get help with my computer. I can get help with my pay stub. We don't want to make that decision if we don't have the capacity at the service desk to take on more work. Let's create additional capacity at the service desk and train them on items before we start taking on more types of tickets at the service desk. And then we also have some additional metrics that you can and should use for doing your own ticket analysis, broken down by different strategic, tactical, and operational goals. One of my favorite items here is under reducing the number of recurring tickets. If I can look at the reduction of volume of recurring tickets over time, that's going to be a great way for us to show the value of our problem management practice. If we're looking at use of the service catalog, well, if we're not creating tickets when people solve their own items at the service catalog, then let's take a look at how service catalog metrics, how that service catalog is being used, and potentially increase in it being used. And then let's compare that to the different types of service request tickets that are coming in. If we turn on self-service password reset and we see password reset dropping by 90% overnight, then that's a great way to show the value of the work you've been doing. Now, we've got about 10 minutes left, so let's talk about the different tools that we need to use, that we can use here. Simple is good. it's okay to use the reporting features built into your IT service management tool. It's okay to export your data to Excel. It's very helpful if you can leverage an analytics tool. Many service desks that I work with are using Manage Engine, and Zoho has an analytics tool that connects to that platform. It's very easy to leverage that vendor tool because it just pulls that data over from the one product into the other product. It's all on the cloud, and they can make it a little bit difficult to export to CSV or Excel sometimes. So if we can leverage that, that's going to be very helpful. Exporting to Python or MATLAB or some other tools. If we can leverage our business information team, business intelligence team, our data scientists or our programmers, it can be very hard to get time and resources from those different groups. But if we can leverage them for a couple hours once a quarter or once twice a year, that's going to help us to create more compelling information, and that's going to help us to leverage the experts in the organization. Ticket analysis, it doesn't need to be sophisticated. When you're in doubt of how to analyze your ticket, it's okay to go back to the basics. It's okay to export to Excel and use pivot tables to identify correlations. Charts, wonderful way of showing trends over time, and manually going through and creating data in Excel. Yes, no one likes to manually create data in Excel, but it is an easy, quick way for us to build reports without having to make a large investment. And it allows us to, once we get working with an Excel report, then we can look at automating it and bringing in some of those expensive developer resources to do that sort of thing. From a learning and development perspective, I cannot stress enough the free resources that are on YouTube. Trying to figure out how Microsoft Intune works, trying to figure out how the latest and greatest features in Excel. YouTube has a ton of resources on there. Vendor certifications, if you're using an IT service management tool or customer relationship management tool, your vendor likely has some sort of certification process, and getting a certificate, either a foundational one or learning more about how to use the reporting capabilities in that tool, that's only going to help you be more effective in multiple aspects of your job, not just in ticket reporting. Third-party tools. ServiceNow has a very extensive app store, for example. SharePoint and Excel have very extensive free resources that anyone can download. Different professional services organizations have libraries of templates. A very common one that I take a look at just for trying to, just for my own, like to inform some of the different templates that we create. Projectmanagement.com has a ton of resources, paid and free online courses, especially for programming languages. There's a lot of free courses out there for things like Python. And then there are a lot of courses on tools like Udemy for ServiceNow, for Cherwell, for other ITSM tools. One of the last message I want to leave you with is this change curve. You just listened to this great analyst drone on for an hour about how amazing things, the amazing things you can do by analyzing your tickets. You're in a state of, you're in a honeymoon of uninformed optimism. Once you go back to the office, virtually speaking, of course, or physically if you're lucky, then you're going to hit this backlash of informed pessimism. This is a bit harder than that person wearing that pink polo shirt led us to believe. You're going to hit the valley of despair. You're going to, as you're looking at improving the service desk, as you're looking at improving your services, you're going to hit a stage where your sentiment bottoms out. People start to think, you know what, it's really inevitable. We're always going to get password resets via email. No one's going to ever use that self-service portal that we paid a lot of money and time to create. You need to push through that. You need to push through that, and you will start to see some successes. And leverage those successes, highlight those successes, because that's what's going to get the team to this bounce of informed optimism. And as you continue to push, continue to highlight what's going really well, you will eventually reach your goals and you will get to the stage of contentment of completion. So thank you very much. Thank you again, Jason, for inviting me to share this information with the team. If you have any feedback, I'm more than happy to answer your questions, more than happy to hear any feedback you have. You can connect with me through LinkedIn, Twitter, or email. I'm going to stick around for a little bit longer, so if you do have any messages in the chat. We're also always looking for people that are willing to share their expertise with us and that we can highlight in our research. If you have any great ideas for analyzing tickets, great, wonderful successes with self-service or with self-service portals, we're always happy to learn from you and highlight your successes for everyone else. So thank you, Jason, for letting me speak. And if no one has any questions, I'm happy to stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. I appreciate you your being with us today, Ken. It was as insightful today as it was when I saw it a couple months ago. I hope everybody enjoyed it and will be taking some things back to their organizations as well. Were there any questions? Feel free to, you can type them in the chat if you'd like, or you can unmute yourself. Okay, well then let's move on. But by the way, everyone, you should connect with Ken on LinkedIn as well. So I guess we're up to Tracy now.
Hi all. First, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. Ken, that was great. That was actually really good information. Appreciate that. So I am part of our partnership program, and what it is that we have our partners that help, I guess, contribute and make sure that they help us have this information for you. Without them, we would not be able to have these presentations, do our virtual presentations, our in-person meetings that we will be having fourth quarter, fingers crossed. So I just want to provide a little bit of information as to what it is that what they get from being a partner with us. They get exposure to our chapter websites with the company logos and their links, and you get actually exposure and acknowledgement at all of our meetings. You get an opportunity to make brief presentations, and you actually get to distribute your marketing material. The opportunity to speak and host at the events such as this, what Margaret's going to be doing, which I can't wait to hear what she has to say. She's presented with us before, and she's done a fabulous job. But she's been, you get a long sponsor table, and you get all of these things that go on at our main event and our big leadership event in December too. So there's a lot of other, things that you can do. We really do have a wide network. We extend to roughly over 200 HDI members. We've actually had some really fantastic participation in our virtual meetings, which, has been amazing. Again, thank you to our membership for doing that. Our regular meetings and our social activities really attract an average of about 40 to 70 local professionals in the area across all different verticals. So you have, all those different industries. So it provides a great benefit. One of the other biggest things that we have is our annual leadership conference, which attracts hundreds of attendees. We have great keynote speakers that speak at that as well. So just a couple of the benefits that being a partner with us can provide. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to John Petticone or myself in regards to that sponsorship. I want to thank each and every single one of our partners. Our first one is our Diamond partnership, which is First Pro. And then we have our platinum partners, which is Sherwell, Stewart, Paradigm, Parmatech, Tech Systems, and Penn State. Our gold partners are Sycamore, New Era, Connections, and CyberCrunch. And our silver partners are Modus and Soma. It's because of them, again, that we are able to give everyone the opportunity to network, get the information, and have some knowledge and learning environments. So we thank them again very much. With that, I would like to introduce Margaret. Margaret is our platinum partner spotlight today. Margaret Batchelor is the Senior Director of our statewide continuing education and workforce development for Penn State. So please welcome Margaret. Margaret, take it away.
All right. Good to see everybody again. Thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you, John, for having me back. Tracy, if you could stop, maybe I can screen share for a couple things, share some interesting tidbits.
Absolutely.
Good to see everyone. I'm with the Penn State Brandywine campus, but I'm also working statewide on various workforce development, post-COVID revitalization efforts. So I know I'd spoken to this group last July. What I find really fun about these type of events, and they're so easy to get to now through Zoom, is just learning about what's going on in different industries, obviously for today, the IT industry and help desk professionals, and what's that like to be in that career. So it's always fascinating. Thank you to our speakers today for increasing my knowledge of this really interesting field. What I do is kind of take a lot of professional groups like this association and try to aggregate the information into the what's next, right? We all want to know what's next. We're getting vaccinated and we're getting states to be open and we're trying to get people back to work in whatever way our companies are saying that's going on. So I'm just kind of doing a little deep dive here on the future of work. I think that's what I did last year. And here we are after a year in our Zoom rooms, still looking at the future of work. So like I said, I'm in media PA right now, usually at Penn State Brandywine, but working with the Commonwealth and the different campuses at Penn State on workforce development. If you haven't heard of us, I mean, I know you've heard of Penn State, but I actually work with just adult learners at Penn State. And also I have colleagues at 21 different campus locations, but also at Abington and Great Valley. And we do a lot of professional development, whether it's credit, non-credit, certificates, professional development. Certainly in the IT field, we do a lot with cybersecurity. Our campuses have a new cybersecurity degree. We have project supply chain and management. And that's really growing because we have a relationship with SAP and enterprise resource management. So as we all know, learning about technology and digital careers are a big part of the future. So you've all already chosen a great career field for yourself here. The other part of what I do is work with Invent Penn State, which is our network of what we call launch boxes. And these are places in the community. I call them storefronts because you can walk into a launch box at a Penn State campus and get advice on how to start a business, or maybe if you're an existing business, how to pivot that business, how to do things differently, whether that's with design thinking or new types of industry 4.0, digital skills. There's a lot of that information coming with our launch boxes. Here in Delaware County, Brandywine is launching its physical launch box this summer in the borough of Lansdowne. So any Delco folks out there on Lansdowne Avenue, right across from the old movie theater, which is actually turning into a concert venue, we're putting a makerspace. So we're going to work with a lot of different people in the communities. It's an all ages makerspace, and hopefully we can find the next generation of IT workers for all of you. It seems that I just bought a whole bunch of these Arduino circuit kits because I guess the kids like to play around with coding with them. So there's a lot of interesting ways that we want to engage with youth as well as entry-level workers to help you all find some more talent. But just some kind of, quick workforce trends, which you're probably seeing yourself in your own offices, that I'm really tracking statewide and regionally right now is, we have a process right now of upskilling our current workers. So a lot of what I've heard today with HDI Philly and all the great professional development through the conferences that you have are all to work on the skill sets of who's currently employed. However, as we know, there's 70 million people who were dislocated since last March 2020 with the pandemic. So we really, as a community, and I do call it a community of higher ed and industry, on how we reskill these workers. Again, you hear about talent shortages. There's a lot of mixed messages on both sides, but certainly people want to get back to work. I think when kids get back in school full time, people want to kind of start moving forward. And this is another big workforce trend, and you've probably seen that either with yourself personally or in your organization, is re-engaging stop-outs. One of the terms that's come out of the last 14 months is the she session, because almost 4 million women have left the workforce. And most of that was due to childcare and remote schools, or the uncertainty of when school was in session. So I think if you're looking for great talent, once schools are back in 5 days a week, there's a tremendous amount of talent on the sidelines right now of people seeking to engage back into more steady workforce. What's interesting too, especially for those of you with college degrees, I think when we think of workforce development, kind of has that vocational connotation, that's something that, oh, that's for people who didn't go to college, or that's skills, or that's kind of, entry level, kind of blue collar occupations. But as you know, the robots are coming, and hopefully they're not coming for your job. But obviously advances in AI and machine learning are replacing tasks that doctors used to do, lawyers doing document review, robotic arms in surgery, bankers processing business loans. So certainly there's a lot of advances that COVID has accelerated on robotic process automation, which is that word streamline. And I know streamline worries people because that means we don't need people. But I think that really what we're evolving into, somebody has to understand that while these automated devices could handle simple tasks, we really need to look at a workforce that can do complex problem solving, and moving some of these more simple tasks to oversee. Those of us that are humans with complex problem solving abilities and the ability to look at nuances and work are going to have to oversee the machinery. So that is a big part with AR, VR, machine learning that's going on with automation of all careers out there. The other interesting trend we're seeing a lot in the news is YOLO. Believe it or not, Microsoft studied that 40% of all workers were considering leaving their jobs. They're calling this the Great Resignation. That's a big buzzword you see. And that's because if you look at this person here, that they're on a Zoom meeting here on the beach, there's a lot of anxiety and concern, and employers trying to understand what their talent wants and how often their talent wants to come to the workforce. And I'm sure you're struggling with that as well. And I don't think there's any easy answer. I mean, there's, companies are approaching things differently. People are approaching things differently. So I think that part of this Great Resignation was, people were very happy and very grateful to be employed during the pandemic. For those of us that were, I think that, YOLO, you only live once, pandemic really shakes up people's priorities and understanding of, what is work, what is life, what is meaning. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of fluidity in the talent marketplace in the next few months. And there's going to be winners and losers, as there always are in economic upheavals, but it just a lot of this stuff going on that you're probably seeing every day in your own worlds. The other thing is, and this is something where if you're looking to kind of how do you build morale in this remote work world and we've been trapped into, and how do you start reconnecting again with your employees or your team? As we know, there's been a really devastating impact of COVID on our local businesses and on the impact of small businesses closing. So some things that I'm seeing employers do or teams do as right. I mean, now there's all these outdoor cafes, or there could be an outdoor service project, a theater event, a walking tour. So, or maybe you want to, help out an event that is part of your company's value systems about addressing inequality, addressing any, racism or bias in your own community. So I think that there's a way that for you to kind of look at your employees in terms of how do we engage them in some of these bigger pictures and these issues that we see on the news and that people are worried about. And this is a way to kind of start building morale, but kind of feeling as though you have that corporate social responsibility impact in your own communities. So I think what's really cool about what could happen post-COVID, since we have the chance to reopen our communities and revitalize them, a lot of the data is really focused on growing local. Remember a few years ago when all these cities were trying to get the second Amazon headquarters, and it was like this feeding frenzy of tax breaks and everybody throwing everything to try to get Amazon. And then out of that, it was, well, do you really need to attract a business from another state, or could you grow from within? So lots of great data coming out on how regions that grow small businesses into medium-sized businesses or solo practitioners into small businesses show a greater impact, not only financially, but in terms of environmental sustainability. Because let's face it, if you live in the community and raise your children there or enjoy your family and friends, you don't really want to pollute it. You're really engaged in very holistically in making sure that community is successful. So we're seeing a lot of trends towards supporting local businesses. And also we're seeing a lot of COVIDpreneurs. So that's a term of a lot of new business filings are up. Some of this has to do for people who've lost their jobs. Some of it's kind of the YOLO piece of it. Some of it is to address the, environmental and social inequities that people are seeing, and they're realizing they have an idea that isn't already, or they're seeing a need in their community that isn't met yet. So again, a lot of dynamic entities, and I'm sure you've heard before that all great companies started in recessions. So there's restaurants I know opening in my community. It seems like every day there's a new store or a new business or a new art gallery opening. So I think people seem really willing to kind of jump ahead and take some risks. So that's kind of, if you're looking for just some topics for, employee professional development or things coming up with people, we do a lot with, taking these entrepreneurship competencies that you see here. We kind of move them into, I'm saying all of us are entrepreneurs right now. I mean, we're all trying to remake ourselves and our companies. So I think entrepreneurship is really important when you're looking at professional development for your team, and how do you get your team more kind of engaged as entrepreneurs. This is some great work from the work of Dr. Carol Dweck, and you can Google this on, I think that in order to get out of COVID and respond to this world that we're in, we need to move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And so there's lots of good kind of stuff out there you can find, or certainly reach out to me on how to kind of take a look at that if it's performance review season for you, or you're looking for kind of a fresh way to engage your employees. And just, again, at Penn State, we're doing a lot with entrepreneurship in the classroom with some of our business students, our IT students. We're doing some work with design thinking. We have the small businesses work with our IT students on app development, website development, working on customer service skills, marketing communication. So even in higher ed, we're pivoting. I think we're probably all sick of that word, but we're all trying to pivot to what what the employers want in the future from all of us in higher ed. So just, this is a little picture here of our launch box in Lansdowne that we're going to be expanding. And again, if you are a small business or you want to help or mentor other small businesses, you can certainly kind of let me know. And I'm pretty easy to find either through my Penn State email or shoot me just a LinkedIn message or connect. And I'm connected with a lot of HDI members already, which is great. Know you're all really active on LinkedIn. So that was a quick, 15-minute overview of the world where we stand right now. And we need everybody's help to get out of this, get out of these rooms, right? And move back into some type of communication and talent development that I hope is, equitable and fair for everybody. So thank you, John and Tracy, for having me today.
Well, thank you, Margaret. And that was really wonderful. I can honestly say that after listening to you, I am definitely not sad that COVID happened. It seems so, you're just absolutely presenting it in such an uplifting and revitalizing light. So thank you. You really actually presented it like, hey, it kind of gave a new way, a new perspective. So thank you. I guess I'm going to turn it over to Colleen. But again, thank you to all of our partners. We do really appreciate everything that you do for us. And again, thank you, Margaret, for doing what you do. Colleen?
Great, thank you, Tracy. So I have the privilege of introducing our next keynote speaker. We have with us today Eric Weston. He is the Senior Director of Workforce Management and Reporting at Alarica. A few things about Eric. He's a highly regarded leader and expert in workforce management. He's worked with more than 15 industries. He started his career as a scheduling analyst and worked his way up through management and now his current role of Senior Director. In his role at Alarica, his teams are responsible for planning, forecasting, scheduling, real-time management, and reporting for a major client that has over 5,000 agents. So welcome, Eric.
Hey, thanks for having me. And it's pronounced Alorica.
Now, I did say that we had a little debrief this morning, and I'm like, does anyone know how to say this name? I think I might be saying it wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And interestingly enough, Alorica is also the largest minority-owned BPO in the U.S. So we handle a large number of different types of clients. And my client's a telecommunications client, but in the past, I've handled a number of different ones, including help desk involving e-legal services. So let me share my screen. We'll get into this. The nice thing about strategic forecasting and planning for me is that it's putting a puzzle together. And that is ultimately what I find to be the best part of my job. I love puzzles. And so, and I'm gonna keep it like this because I'm gonna be switching between the PowerPoint and a set of Excel sheets that I put together to help illustrate what I'm looking at. As a part of my career, I've also been with Conduent and Convergys, and I am a COPC CX implementation leader, certified in 6.0. And I led the Conduent Center of Expertise. I've been responsible for the training of all new WFM employees, periodic testing to manage the knowledge and retention of that, and then white paper development. So strategic forecasting. This is a process in which a business uses their historical data to develop a plan to approach staffing needs in a consistent and deliberate manner. And that's important. Anytime you're dealing with any sort of organization, IT or otherwise, you need to have a consistent approach. And being deliberate means being able to be reactive and responsive, but not responding with a lack of consideration for what the events are going to do. When you've got a plan, you can react to events. Planning always involves business continuity, and planning for volume is another part of that. Now, strategic forecasting means that you develop scenarios. What sort of scenarios do you need? What's likely to happen? What's unlikely to happen you don't need to waste a whole lot of time on? What are the unlikely events that you do need to plan for? We're in May right now, but in the Philippines, you're looking at their rating season hitting in August, and then southeastern US is going to be hit by hurricanes in September, October. being able to plan for those which occur regularly, but you don't know exactly when they are, things that need to be accounted for in your strategic forecast. When you're dealing with help desk, things where regular releases might be occurring. You know that your release for a particular software happens every quarter, usually at the end of the quarter. Well, make sure you build that into your plan and account for that. Then you want to talk about your business objective. What is your customer base? What is the service target? Are you answering an 85, 60 service level? Are you looking at an ASA? Are you looking at turnaround times? If it's purely based upon non-voice communication, whether it's email, IMs, or whatever, how do you manage the costs related to that? Because certain types of voice or non-voice is going to determine whether or not you can incur that cost, especially if you're expecting high spikes. Do you staff to those high spikes? Those are things that you need to do. And now I found online a nice little definition of that I think is really good for this. When that's formal strategic planning, it's an explicit written process for determining your long range objectives. And strategic forecasting is very much aligned to that. It's systematic. You monitor results, you react to those results, you account for it, and move on to the next step. And then by planning appropriately, you can gain commitment from your firm. Now, planning and forecasting. So forecasting, we're going to start with. They're really tightly intertwined. So you can pretty much swap them out, but they're all based upon the same thing. Choose your approach and method. Are you going to use a monthly down to daily, or are you going to use daily up to monthly? Are you going to use a regression analysis? You're going to pick weighted averages, moving weighted average. There's not really a lot of wrong approaches, but some can be more effective than others, depending upon what you're trying to do. All of this requires historical data, and a lot of it. The less you have, the less accurate you're likely to be. At one of my previous jobs, my IT organization consistently got on my back because my shared drive had gigs worth of old staff plans, historical data, reports that I've run and saved, all because I knew that I would need them at some point in order to evaluate what's going to happen. Why is that so important? Because that tells you what's going to come. Do you know what's coming? Do you have automation in place? Are you going to have bots in place to answer simple questions or to do call diversion? If you have someone always doing a password reset, can they go to that from an automated source? That saves workload and also can identify coaching that might be needed. Because a lot of what we do as planners and workforce management is helping our partners provide the right level of service to their own peers and their own service people. Then we can use that ticket data to identify trends, workload, turnaround time, total service completion time. All of that feeds right over to the planning side. You use the business goals that you've set up. Then you could look at your requires that you have to require an understanding of your environmental factors. Now, environmental factors covers a lot. I'm not talking just about hurricanes or weather, earthquakes or things like that, but what's the regional, social, and political factors? What are your buildings like? Are they in an area that traffic's likely to impact it? Are you primarily work from home? If you're work from home, what are the areas that you've got? Do you have a map that shows you where everyone's actually located? So if there's an ISP outage or something, you can account for that. All these environmental factors go into your planning. Understand your tactical approach. That means you're scheduling in real-time management. Now, this can impact your overall long-term forecasting because a peak day, like I'll use energy as an example. Energy industries have Mondays and Tuesdays as their peak days. They're generally 5 to 10% higher than any other day of the week. And their peak is longer throughout the day. So if you look at a call arrival pattern, it is from, let's say, 8 to 7. Then Friday, you're only looking at the peak period between 11 and 5. There's actually not a whole lot of peak periods after 5 for energy because people call in their lunch breaks. They don't tend to call after work or before work, and most energy companies close for business right around 6 or 7 local time. So if you're dealing with a situation like that and you're hiring people to work 5x8 schedules, you're going to be overstaffed for 3 days out of the week. So how can you manage the scheduling side of it to impact your planning side so you don't overhire and overstaff, because you're not going to be able to let everyone go and pay them for 2 days work. What's your minimum customer service expected? How long before someone abandons? Is there a complaint threshold? A retail manufacturing client of mine had a situation where they would plan for longer wait times during their peak season during Christmas because customers were willing to wait, and the NPS scores didn't change. From the time that rest of the year, they needed at an average span time around 200 seconds. But after that, it would go during peak time for 2 months. Customers were around for 800, 900 seconds easy. But the NPS score didn't change. They had established a way for customers in their call diversion techniques, the IVR, to say, hey, it's really busy, you're gonna need to wait. Obviously a lot more polite than that, but those types of approaches help with that. And we built that into our planning to help manage cost and compliance. So why the tactical understanding? I talked a little bit about that, the interval impact, where are your arrival patterns hitting? How are your dips and peaks going? What are your scheduling strategy legalities? You're in the upper Northeast, you got people that might live outside of your immediate area. You're going to have a slightly different approach to what scheduling is depending upon the region. Look at New York City, for example, it's much different for scheduling for New York City than it is for New York State or for Connecticut or the surrounding area. Pennsylvania has some similar situations where certain cities will have a little bit more rigor on scheduling and legal compliance than you will people that live outside of it. So understanding the legalities of your scheduling strategy will impact your interval assessment. Then for your daily impact, that comes from your interval impact. Peak day versus next highest versus local day. I talked a bit about that with the energy side. The absenteeism. People, when they're really heavily occupied, tend to call out more often. So when they're not heavily occupied, they don't feel the need to call out as much. We're seeing that now with COVID hitting and really heavy occupancies during work peak days. Handle times go up. It takes a lot longer to handle a complaint than it does during the next day, which has an occupancy 10 to 15% less than peak day. And handle times go down, absenteeism goes down, and it drops the staffing need by 30% for us. So those things really help to understand when you're planning. So I need to know that I'm planning for a 30% increase in staffing on my peak day and my overall weekly staff. And then what opportunities do you have for planning in that daily? I was talking about tiered schedules, 4x10s. Can we do part-timers? What sort of opportunities do we have to manage that in our planning? Because that impacts my FTE. Now, FTE definition for me is 40 hours. If you're dealing in the US, it's usually the same thing. But once you start having the staff outside of that, then it becomes a little bit greater of a impact. So again, scheduling strategy legalities impact that. So we'll go into this, and then I'm going to go into the spreadsheets that I built for us. So the planning steps, the practical application. I usually start from a daily arrival pattern. The reason why I do that is because it helps me understand my cross month. So like the week of Memorial Day, Labor Day doesn't really impact it as much, but the 4th of July can. You could see an impact from Thanksgiving in the case of Cyber Week or something like that. So understanding your daily arrival pattern just allows you to understand how the cross month forecasting is going to impact it. Your weekly arrival pattern. This is where I find the absolute bang for my buck. In a billing situation or a new release, that weekly arrival pattern is usually where you're going to see where that peak hits. And you can plan your staffing and schedules and PTO and anything else related to that long term to account for that. If your peak day is usually the first week of the month, then you minimize your shrink for that period. Off phone, breaks, you want to try to maximize the usage in the right times. If you've got coaching or one-on-ones that people need to do with their managers, you might want to move it to different periods of the day or even in the next week of the month. Understand how that weekly arrival pattern hits allows you to impact your staffing needs. Then detrend. Detrending is important for things like handle time, things like seasonal impacts. That detrending is really important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it here because it doesn't always impact everything. Some things, the detrending, you're going to see minimal impact for. But what I do show you in here is going to be related to releases. So seasonality versus tenure. When you're planning your staff out, it takes time for people to become proficient. So if it's about looking up information and retaining that so they don't have to constantly look it up in the KBs. Is it being able to access the system and know where in the system to look to find previous cases? That's tenure level will improve your turnaround times. Seasonality impacts everybody equally. But where the two combine is when you're hiring a bunch of people or bringing on people short term during the peak seasons that you see, and it has a double impact. So it's important to understand how that's going to come in so you can hire appropriately. So let's go into the forecast workbook I built. So this particular client is an anonymized client, but they do have a definite beginning of the year peak, and they also have one sort towards the end of the year. Now, this is where I look at both my weekly and daily impacts. So you can see here that this formula is simply what's the week's volume divided by the previous week's volume. So you can see here that in January of last year, the week of MLK Day had a significant decrease in volume. Now, I don't have the handle time in here, but that does impact what's happening because it does go down. And the reason it goes down is because of this high peak that we see in these first 2 weeks here. Means that I'm hiring just before New Year's so that people are going to handle calls right when I need them. So my handle times are going to be higher these first 2 weeks, and it will drop within the third week. So when I look at my week by week of tenure for handling my cases, I may overstaff earlier in December to allow me to have a lower handle time right here to reduce my staffing needs. But it's going to have a very big impact later in the month, regardless of what I do, because that lower handle time and the increased staffing means that I may be overstaffed. So what do I do to account for that? I need to take that into consideration as I build my plan. So if I'm planning for next year, I need to know that. Then I have these highlighted. These are all my holidays from last year. What did I see as an impact to it? How am I going to impact it next year? Do I have it in the right place? For example, if we're looking at Easter, I'd want to go look and find out when Easter hits next year. So that way I can build in my impact. If you're in a heavily Catholic area, or you have customers in a heavily Catholic area, you may not see as much volume in that period, and you need to account for that. When you are in a place where you will see impacts due to Memorial Day, schools are just getting out, everyone's going away. Is that going to impact your volume heavily or not? You can see here that last year we did see an increase in volume from the previous year. That's a fairly unusual circumstance for this particular client. So I went back and looked at previous areas, and it looks as though it's a new trend. Again, for here, this is the 4th of July. Now, next year, the 4th of July is going to occur, or this year rather, it occurs on a Sunday, but next year will be on a Monday. So how do we account for that? I could wait until after the 4th this year to come up with an impact. And I don't particularly have volume from the 4th last time I was on a Monday. So what I need to do is identify a place where I can get that same trend to build it in here and decide what to do. If we look at last year, you can see that both weeks had a very similar amount of volume, but it did go up during the week of the 4th, right after the 4th, and then it dropped back down. That's typical with this particular client. So what I can assume based upon that is that as I build it in, I will have an increase in volume during this period that is negatively impacted by Monday. So I could probably use a Memorial Day type of pattern for that without anything else to stand on. Labor Day is almost the exact same sort of impact, so I'll just use whatever we have there. Going into my peak season, this particular client has a release of a product in September, October, and November that tends to increase the handle times pretty significantly, but also call volumes of particular types come in requiring a lot of technical support. So the handle times go up by 5% in September, October, 10, and another 2% in November, December. So I know that's going to happen. I'm going to go and build that into my handle time forecast, but the volumes itself, I need to go and look at what the call types are. So this is where I start breaking down the individual contact types. If I have ticket data, then I can look at that, how many came in, what were the root causes, and determine if that's a likely impact for the future. The more data you have on root cause, the easier it is to forecast what's going to happen. So as a part of this, I like to do a regression analysis of my handle time. So here in this particular case, I've got handle time all the way back to 2016. And you can see that down here, handle time has come in very low back in 2016, but it has steadily increased throughout the entire year. Every year it's gone up more. Now, somebody that's coming into this blind without much experience would probably assume that things have changed pretty significantly, but they could not identify what. Now, the main reason for this has been automation. As more automation comes in, easier call types are taken care of. We have self-service on the web. We have chat bots that can do it. So that means only the more difficult call types consistently get left behind. Now that increases handle time. And while call volume goes down, what we found is that that call volume tends to increase as they don't abandon as much of the same type. In the past, say 2018, we would see the more difficult call types with a higher set of abandon because people would just get frustrated with waiting and go ahead and go try to figure it out themselves. Now that they're not waiting as long, they call back in greater details or more willing to call back and wait for a little bit longer because service times haven't changed, but the handle times are longer because the call types are more complex. In addition, as new products are released, this client has a habit of changing their backend systems. So the interface with the customer software, they used Jira for the last few years, and some of the releases from that, the learning curve for agents and supervisors grows with it because now we're adding more to take care of that, and the additional calls take more time to learn how to handle them more effectively. So in this regression analysis and the detrending, and by the way, Jason, I'll send this to you in a separate email so that if anybody wants to have access to either of these worksheets, they're free to use it. Happy to share it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
But this detrending is just very simple detrending to figure out what your seasonality is going to be. And you can see here that on an average, you're looking at Q1 being the lowest AHT and then Q4 being the highest. But as it goes up, every quarter goes up because of the releases that we see. It's not only the, like I said, Jira, but also the product that they service. They need to make sure that they're taking care of it, and it requires more continuing education to build upon that. So coming back to this PowerPoint, what you're looking at here with seasonality versus tenure, that's where I build that in. So after doing that detrending, how can I evaluate the actual impact of seasonality so that my tenure is removed from that? And then I can build my tenure into my staff planning so I don't have to worry about the seasonality. I can say, I know I'm going to see this handle time impact. I'm going to overstaff briefly for a month, knowing the next 2 months, my handle time and experience is going to be so improved that I actually need fewer people. So I'm going to pause there and open things up for questions.
So I guess my first question is, do you factor in like how long it takes to train somebody and get them up to speed and proficient so that they're able to be on the phones and productive? Because, I'm trying to think through my own particular situation. I know that I have seasonality and I know I have some peaks and valleys, but I also know it takes me at least a month to get a service desk analyst proficient. So I'm willing to eat some inefficiency, some overstaffing, just to make sure that I have continuity of service so that I do have, enough staffing for the peaks.
No, absolutely. So in this particular client that I was showing you, from the time that they go through their training, their basic training is 5 weeks. Then they have a 4-week transition period of on-the-job training, where it's partly on the phones, partly off the phones, learning and discussing. And the time that they start in that first week to the time that they're fully in production is about a 15% drop in turnaround time and handle time. So knowing that, and I trend my handle time by week of tenure. So week 1 through week, currently we're going through week 26. So there's 26 week of full tenure, and 6 months or greater. That allows us to place the classes appropriately. One of my healthcare clients that I've handled in the past, I would overstaff December, because that very first week of January, where everyone's calling in for open enrollment and saying, I've got new benefits, how do I manage this? Instead of having everyone show up week 1, right on that first week of January, I had them show up in December, week 1. And I would be overstaffed by 10% in December, and I can handle 25% more volume in January versus the previous year with 35% less staff. Because I knew where the handle time drops were, and the improvements in understanding what exactly was happening benefited the entire business.
It's an interesting approach. Yeah, I've never measured. I measure handle time aggregate. I don't, and I look at, outliers. Like I look at somebody, who might be too long, or somebody who's too short, but I don't look at it in an individual basis. So I think that's an interesting thing I'm going to take from this.
Yeah, and look at if you can break it down by the contact type, and when those calls come in. So if you're in a period, by week or even by day, if you have a particular contact type that is really long, like telecommunications, new device calls and billing calls are the 2 longest calls they have. So new device is generally just setting it up, making sure it gets there. Those can take 30 or 40 minutes to complete. If you have a new iPhone launch or Samsung launch, you're going to see a significant increase in that. So accounting for that in your forecast and what it takes to get people developed for that is going to allow you to say, well, I need to do this in my training plan, or I need to recommend this change and maybe just customize certain training for easy call types so my experienced reps can handle the more complex types.
But you also have to be really embedded in the business. Like you have to be forward thinking and knowing, what's coming up, what's going to hit in October, what's hitting in January, and, what is the impact to the service desk or the call center operations.
That absolutely is true.
If they don't talk to you, you're going to have a mess.
Absolutely. Benchmark other industries too, or your competitors. They're going to know what's going on. Go to the industry meetings. I use SWPP, Society for Workforce Planning Professionals, and I go to Nashville every couple of years to mingle and talk to people and find out what's going on. When I managed a client that was a retail client, they had their call center in one of the distribution centers. So when we went out to visit, we got a tour of the distribution center, and that opened my eyes up. I was a senior manager at the time. The way that they plan a distribution center is exactly the same as a call center. It's about workload. They have all these different carousels, which are like queues. People pick and drop and move around just like they would in an IVR. Benchmark things that you don't think are going to be exactly relevant, and you'd be surprised at how quickly you can come up to a shared understanding.
And it's all about the math. It's all about the numbers.
It's about the math, but also the conceptual understanding. You can know all the math you want, but if you don't understand the industry, the math is just going to tell you what it is, not going to tell you why it is. And that's what strategic forecasting is about, is knowing the why.
Great point. Okay, does anybody else have any questions they want to run by Eric while we have him? Well, Eric, I really appreciate your flexibility. I know that we were juggling the times a little bit, but this was really insightful. If you share your PowerPoint in that.
There was actually a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Sam asked, do you look at staffing time off trends as part of the analysis? I absolutely do. So if you got really tenured people, they're going to develop a lot of time off. One of those pieces is, where does that occur? If they are, is it going to all be in December or around holidays and the like? So how much do you allow for that time off is important. if you're working with a union shop, it's going to be a lot more complex of a situation. But knowing where the time off hits is important. Knowing where the time off hits that is unplanned is just as important. Where are people likely to take the extra time off? And build that into your strength planning. When you have large hours of operation, I would suggest using bands of time. So maybe every 2 hours, people that start between 8 and 10 and 10 and 12 and 12 and 1, 2, those people get 3% in each of those so that you don't denude the opening time frame because all your tenured agents move earlier. If your staff is got a habit of taking a lot of time off on Friday, does the schedules that you've got built for them allow for that? Do you have to overstaff extra to account for it and build that into your long-term training plan and as well as your tactical scheduling?
There we go. Any other questions? Okay. Well, Eric, I appreciate you spending some time with us. And if you could share your presentation and that spreadsheet, I'll make sure that the members get access to it.
Yeah, I'll get it to you in the next day or so. I have
That's
to
awesome.
strip out a couple of client-specific pieces out of one of them.
Certainly. Yep. Understand.
All right. Thanks for having
All
me. I
right.
appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks, guys. Okay. Let's see what's next up. Alexis is next.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good. I love that you're walking around the office.
I sure am. It is extremely noisy on the one end, and I was all set up. We just moved into a new office in King of Prussia, so I'm moving to a different little bar. But really appreciate everyone joining today's meeting. It was very informational. So thank you so much to all of the speakers. And we have two prize drawings for today. So first one is going to be for Julia Chi. And second one for Melissa Worth. So congratulations. I'm gonna put both names in the chat. If you want to just direct message me your email address so that I can get both of the gift cards over to you, that would be great.
And I think that wraps up the meeting for today. It was good catching up with everybody. Our next meeting is in July, and let me give you the exact date. Hang on.
14th, July 14th.
July 14th. There we go. Thank you. So everybody enjoy being outside. Hopefully you can take your masks off. Hopefully you've gotten vaccinated and you're being safe and you know, looking forward to getting things back to normal. John, is there anything you wanted to close with? You're muted.
You're muted.
I'll just say, John, congratulations on your son's wedding. Okay, thanks everybody. So long now.
Thank you.